can blend in and be accepted amongst folks that we were supposed to be rejected from.
My God.
Are you hearing what I'm saying? And so many of us are trying, my God, to try to be accepted in an environment where God never intended for us to get along.
Yeah.
God sometimes puts you in circumstances and situations to upset the normal, to try to get people to start thinking, to start getting people to start originating in a fresh idea. And so when God creates you in his image, after his likeness, he had a thought that he wanted to put into the earth, and no longer can we keep trying to cause ourselves to become something that we were never called to be, just so that we can be accepted by people.
Come on.
That God never wanted us to be belonging in the first place.
Come on, Apostle.
And this is what's happening within the text. Jesus is an original thought. He is an idea that has been sent by God into the earth to upset the normal. The chief priests and the Pharisees got together because they were manipulating, dominating, and controlling an environment. They were producing an environment that brought people up under oppression. And so many of us do not want to try to get in this type of condition or situation, because we already know what the outcome is going to be if we come in and try to upset the original power that is going on in our community. And because of the fact that we know that if we get rejected, then rejection means something completely different to us than it means to anybody else. Rejection literally has been hardwired into your system to make you think that if you ever get rejected, you're going to die.
Come on. Yeah.
Back in the original cave times and things of that nature, people would literally be in communities. There was safety within the community. And we're not kicking against the community. We're not saying not be in a community. But I'm saying that if our community cannot accept diversity, then it is not a community, it's a cult. Somebody say diversity, diversity. So what they found out that in the cave times is that when you were actually engrafted into this community or within a group of people, that group of people actually created survival. It created security. And if you were ever kicked out of the community, that meant that was a death sentence. And so that has been hardwired within our system to make us believe within ourselves that if we ever get rejected, that we're going to actually die. We cannot survive outside of the community that we were supposed to be in or in connection with. But I'm here to tell you that there is a higher level of thought. That God did not put you into the earth necessarily for you to always get along to get along. He put you in the earth sometimes to create some kind of flack. Listen, I'm just now in my 40 plus years starting to become accepted within myself and don't give a hoot nanny. Oh, I'm going to say it real strong. Who accepts and who does not accept, because we understand, listen, God didn't put me here just to get along with the community, and I'm not going to die if I ever get rejected. For the first time today, touch your neighbor and say, you're not going to die if you're not accepted. Come on, you're going to survive. You're going to live, because there's another dimension and another realm of glory that God wants to bring you into. And just because everybody doesn't say amen, and just because everybody does not pat you on the back, does not mean that you're not called and equipped by God to do what it is that God has called you to do. Can I help somebody in the room? You know, they tell me all the time, I need to tone it down. I need to pull it back a little bit.
Apostle.
I'm a little bit too aggressive. I'm too abrasive. And all this. Listen, the reason why God put me in the earth is because he knew that I would have this male type of tenacity to bring about some change. Are you hearing what I'm saying? So when I go into a group of people, it's to rub them the wrong way. Not because I'm trying to irritate you, not because I want to frustrate you, it's because I'm trying to provoke you into something greater. Somebody say, it's all love. It's all love. I think God for the people that provoked me. I thank God for the people that talked about me. I thank God for the people that made fun of me. I thank God because if it wasn't for them, it would not have solidified me to be the strength that I am right now. Somebody say, all things are working together for the good of them that loves the Lord. We see a conflict within the text because of the fact that Jesus is now an offshoot. He is something unusual. He is something that we cannot trace any real lineage back, because they try to say, isn't this the carpenter's son? Yes, but no. The carpenter is not responsible for this. Isn't this Mary's son? Yes, but no. Mary is not responsible for this. This thing is an original thought that God put in the earth. And we can see this is recovered by John chapter 1, when he says, in the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God. And the Word was God. Listen, just because you can't receive the Word that I am doesn't mean God didn't send it. This is what Jesus is. Jesus was put into the earth. Why? Not to be popular, but to create a movement, to create a shifting, to create something different. And just because you get rejected does not mean, can I say it again?
Come on, Apostle.
Come on.
I remember listening to Obama's pastor, old pastor before he fired him. Because he was too abrasive.
Yeah, that's right.
He was too different. He was too radical. He was too prophetic. And so he would say things that would get him into trouble. And I really admire a presentation that he gave when he said, different does not mean deficient.
Right. That's good.
Somebody say different.
Different
does not mean deficient.
does not mean deficient.
And so he went through all of the history of even African Americans as they come into this world or into this nation. And then they show how that they were different, but it was not necessarily deficient. And so we're seeing this within the text. Jesus is sitting here and he's different. Somebody say different. He's just different. And so as he is now, my God, coming amongst the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all of these other chief priests, they are not accepting him because he's completely different. The way he talks is different. The way he acts is different. But even though he looks like them, he's still different. Even though he walks around and he dresses like them possibly, but he's still different. Have you ever noticed that even though you look like everybody that's around you, that you know you're different than everybody? Something is completely unique about you. Sometimes they want to call you the black sheep of the family. But can I tell you that God has ordained and anointed you to make a difference right in the area that you're in?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so we can no longer start frowning upon what it is that God has given unto us because of the fact that we're not necessarily accepted. There is something that I'm sent here to do. Somebody say, Lord, help me.
Lord, help me.
And so when we are even in this sanctuary, I want to let you know, first and foremost, since Jesus is an original thought, since he is a word that has been sent into the earth, therefore we've got to understand that even when we look at verse 34, there were some things that were 33 that was taking place within the text. It says, Jesus starts going into a parable. And he starts talking about how God, who created this vineyard, the vineyard could be interpreted as Israel. And so as we're looking, it says, yet here another parable, there was a certain householder which planted a vineyard. That householder is God. That vineyard is Israel. And it is hedged around about and digged. Verse 34 says, and when the time of the fruit drew near, somebody say harvest time.
Harvest time.
When the time of fruit drew near, he sent his servants to a husbandman that they might receive the fruits of it. And so it goes on that this originator of the vineyard sends now his servants to go and retrieve his portion of fruit.
Yeah.
But the story goes, as Jesus is telling, he says he sent 3 different representatives, and all of the people that was actually tenants of that vineyard decided that they were not going to allow the owner to get his fruit. So they crucified, or they killed, or they beat and they abused, they rejected all of the servants.
Yeah, wow.
Because of the fact that they didn't want the husbandman or the one that originated this whole vineyard to come away with anything significant. And so finally, God, which is the husbandman, made the decision and said, we're going to go ahead and send my son. He says, because after all, they'll have some respect for him. When the son comes along, they looked at him and said, well, this is the owner's son, so let's go ahead and kill him because he's got an inheritance tied to him. You got to understand that the reason why people are killing you is because there's something that's connected to you that you don't even know you possess.
Prophesy it.
God has already earmarked you, and he's already put something significant upon you to make you an original, to make you not a carbon copy, to make you something that is going to be, my God, a change agent within your community.
I receive it.
And so you are thinking that you're going to come to this earth with some level of respect, some level of virtue, some level of honor. But we come here, and how many of you have discovered that you're having a completely different experience?
My God.
It's because God sent you. Listen, I don't know if you are the tenant or if you are a part of what God is sending into the earth, but there is a side that you got to decide that you're going to be on. That either you're going to be the one that's going to be abusive to the word or the will of God, or you're going to be the one that is going to say, I'm going to accept God's will even if it's uncomfortable.
Even if.
My God.
Are you hearing me? And sometimes accepting God's will means that you've got to take on an identity and a personality that is not going to be celebrated. Are you hearing what I'm saying? I remember a whole lot of times we used to create this colloquialism within the church that says you got to go where you are celebrated and not tolerated. But that's foolishness. What kind of world you going to go into where people are consistently and persistently always celebrate you? That is not reality. Sometimes people got to tolerate you before they can celebrate you. Celebrate you. Oh, did nobody say amen? Because everybody's personality is not celebratory.
That's true.
Sometimes you are sent on an assignment to get on my nerves.
That's true.
I can think of a few people right now. There's a few people right now that sometimes are sent to get on your nerves, to agitate you, because and you thank God for them, because you would not have prayed nearly as much. You would not have sought God nearly as much. So what am I telling you? That sometimes these situations and these circumstances that are happening within your reality is provoking the God that's on the inside of you.
Yes.
Not only that, but when the mix of God coming out, sometimes some of that other junk comes out with it.
That's right. That's right.
You didn't even know you cussed that man until you came in contact with some people. You didn't know you had a rejection issue until you got rejected. So I thank God for putting me in circumstances and situations that brought out the weaknesses that were tied to me that I didn't even know was there. And so why is that so important? Because the Lord said, let the weak say, I'm strong. So how can I confess? How can I come into a place of strength until I first admit where I'm weak? So they started to kill the people. They killed the son because he had an inheritance. Guess what happened? And so he's dumbfounded. He sat back and he says, all right, I understand that they don't know that I'm the creator of the vineyard. I wanted to pause a little bit here because a lot of my text is going to rest right within this aspect. Is the fact that you got to notice here that everything that we're standing in right now is not you sitting in flesh and blood. You're sitting in thought right now. You are overwhelmed not by your experiences out here, but some of us are tied to a past experience that is now controlling our current reality. There are thoughts, there are ideas that we have come away with because of some experiences that we've had in the past. And so we're not sitting in church right now, we're sitting in our thoughts. And everything that we experience is filtered through what we think is happening, and not necessarily what is presently happening. Thoughts, therefore, have the power to control our experiences based upon what we simply think about what we experience. And so this creates a problem because God, who is the vine dresser, he's created all of this. This is all of his thoughts. But we can go away with a different type of an experience contrary to what he had predestined for us to experience, because we're holding on to a thought, my God, that causes us to feel rejected or causes us to feel alienated. And because of that seat that we now sit in, it becomes our mindset. Psalms chapter 1 says this: blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or set foot on the path of sinners, but watch this, or sit in the seat of the scornful.
Yes.
So the question is this morning is, where are you sitting in your thoughts? Why is it that some people make the decision, even though God has dressed this to be a beautiful occasion, a wonderful experience? Do you think God literally put you into the earth for you to have literally hell on earth? No, there were some things that you had to experience, and there are some things that you had to grow from, but now some reason, somehow, you have allowed a thought to come into your mind that makes you feel disqualified, to make you feel rejected, to become your own reality. The psychologists call it a default emotion. Somebody say a default emotion. That means no matter what's going on, you're going to always default to an emotion that you consistently and persistently think about all the time. So you can be in a happy situation. You can have a husband that is God's best for you. And yet, because you're in a default emotion of scornfulness, you will sit there and be skeptical because of what God sent you.
My God. Make it plain.
Come on, sir.
Ain't nobody talking to you.
Wow.
You can also be in an environment where, well, you can sit and you say, well, I don't trust anybody. Your spirit is not open to anything because of the fact you are in a default of scornfulness. You are sitting in a seat that makes you skeptical.
Come on.
Lord have mercy.
Why? Because you are not into the original dressed mind that God had designed for you. What does that mean? If God created you in his image, which we know he did, and after his likeness, therefore there is a thought that God had when he was creating you.
Yes.
And that thought was to prosper you.
Come on.
Amen, Jeremiah.
Amen.
He said, I didn't bring you into this earth because I wanted you just to get along. He says, but I made you a prophet before anybody could ever recognize the prophetic on you.
Yes.
He said, I sent you in as a message. The prophetic, it means to be a proclaimer, is to give a message. He says, I sent you here, and I wanted you to know before you had a problem, before you have an issue, before you have circumstances, before anything negative can happen to you, I want to let you know, Jeremiah, that I sent you into the earth to be a prophet already.
My God.
Now the reason why we're rejoicing in that, because he says, I have thoughts concerning you, thoughts to prosper you, but yet I'm in a situation that does not look prosperous.
My God.
I'm in a circumstance that does not look favorable. As a matter of fact, I was sent into areas where I was deeply rejected. And so what happened? Most of us will sit in a seat of scornfulness because it is a thought of a past experience that consistently and persistently reoccurs within our mind no matter what goes on around us. So the question is again, where are you sitting? What thoughts are you having at this moment? And so what happens to us then, if we sit in a seat of rejection, we will go from pillar to post looking for acceptance, never giving ourselves permission to be accepted.
Yeah.
Did you hear what I said? We'll leave this place and we'll go to another place. We'll go to another family. We'll go to another husband. We'll go to another wife. We'll go to another this and another that, trying to feel accepted. But we don't understand that the thoughts that we are having within our minds are what's controlling our reality. So nobody can make you feel anything. If you're looking for somebody to make impossible. If you're looking for somebody to make you feel accepted, that's impossible because you're not experiencing what somebody is doing to you. You're experiencing what you think they are doing to you.
Yes, sir.
So this is why God was trying to solidify Jeremiah and all of his prophets because of the fact that he already knew, listen, they gonna try to kill you because I'm going to send you as an original thought, but I don't ever want you to get your approval from them. I want you to always think back to what I said concerning you. Thoughts to prosper you.
Yes.
I was like, God, how could Jesus go through all that he went through and still make it? How could Jesus actually find himself in a predicament where he consistently and persistently did the will of God without fail? And the Lord took me back to the moment where he was being baptized.
Come on, God.
And once he submitted for the first time to John the Baptist, he went down into the water and the Lord made an announcement.
Come on, sir.
He said, everybody, I want you to know, this is my beloved son, in whom I'm well pleased. Can I give you an answer to the situation? The only way you're going to be able to make it all the way through the turmoil and the strives and the bad experiences of your life is that you've got to think back to a time where God makes an announcement inside of all of the voices in your head. Listen to the thought that says, this is my beloved son. This is my beloved daughter, in whom I'm well pleased.
Yeah.
What did I just say to you? The only way you're going to make it to a successful end or the successful target and hit the goal is that you listen to the well-pleased voice. The voice of approval. The voice of validation. The only reason why you quit was because you heard the other voices. You heard the other thoughts that were on the inside of your head that said you're not good enough, that you're not accepted, that you're never going to amount to anything, you're never going to be anything, you're never going to go anywhere. If you listen to those voices are sent on an assignment to defeat what God has already approved. Did y'all hear what I'm saying? I said you've already been approved. Jeremiah chapter 1. Before I formed you, he said, I've already ordained you. I've already validated you. I've already put approval on the inside of you.
Come on, Apostle.
The only way you're going to give up is if you make the decision to give up.
Come on, Apostle. Yeah.
Talking about it. So if we're not sitting in the vine dresser, if we're not sitting in what God has designed, his original thoughts, then what seat are we sitting in?
What seat?
Are we sitting in a seat of the scornfulness? Do we always go back to a default emotion? No matter what goes on, no matter what happens. You ever see those people that one minute they laugh and then the next minute they quiet? Sitting over in the corner somewhere, not even interacting with people anymore. Why? Because they found themselves outside of that default.
Come on.
Oh, I'm not supposed to be this happy.
Come on.
Oh,
My Lord.
I messed up and had a good time.
My Lord.
Oh, I'm not supposed to be this joyful. And so what will happen is that they'll go and they'll pull themselves back and they'll stay in that place of seclusion because now they're isolated. And now they can stay in that seat called the scornful. So that's a default emotion. Number two, this is what happens to people who end up being in a place of rejection, is that you live in a perceived thought of yourself, which is often, again, filtered through how someone else treated you.
Wow. That is so true.
So you've had a bad experience. Number one, that's become your default emotion. You live there. You're constantly depressed.
My God.
Anybody been in a relationship with somebody like that?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. Or been that person. Don't even matter what happens. It's just, no matter what goes on, you can spend no amount of money and they're still not happy.
Not happy.
Yes.
No matter what you do, it's never good enough.
Come on.
And then what does that do for you? It feeds your rejection because it feels like, okay, I'm not good enough.
Right.
So now dysfunction starts feeding dysfunction.
Come on, come on.
Before you know it, you're in this bad relationship. It's only bad not because of the individual. It's because of your own thought. Because of your default emotion. But number two, how did I get here? I got there because I adopted somebody else's thought concerning me. And made it my reality. Are you hearing me? This is the same thing that happened to Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve were in a beautiful situation.
Beautiful.
Everything was perfect. But somebody came along and interjected a thought concerning them.
Right.
Adam and Eve now was told, did God tell you that you had everything?
Come on, Apostle.
You don't have everything. He left some things out. He told you not to go and do this because if you ate from this tree, your eyes were going to come open just like him. He was keeping something from you. So he had to sell deficiency to them before he could actually get their eyes to come open to deficiency.
Come on, Apostle.
Did y'all hear what I said?
Yeah.
They had to take deficiency as a thought. They had to eat that idea before it can become their reality.
Wow.
And this is what's happening to us. We are living in places beneath our privilege. Why? Because we have adopted somebody else's idea concerning us.
Come on, Apostle.
Woo. Can I tell somebody in here, you are not how they treat you.
Prophesy. Prophesy.
Yes, sir.
Say it again.
You hear what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Can I tell you you're good enough?
I receive it.
Yes.
Can I tell you you're brilliant?
I receive
Can
it.
I tell you you're fearfully and wonderfully made?
I receive
I
it.
don't care who's on your side. I don't care who's applauding you. Come on here. Listen, I'm here to let you know that what God sent into the earth, maybe we don't understand it as of yet, and maybe you don't even understand it. But can I tell you all together that everything that you are, everything that you will ever be is beautiful and wonderful once you come back to the original idea. Somebody said the original idea. So when you come back to the original idea of what God thinks about you, listen, you can stand in front of all kinds of people. They can roll their eyes and they can suck their teeth and you can still be secure in who God has called you to be. Are you hearing what I'm saying?
Yes.
Thank God. Listen, when we created, when God put this idea within us concerning this church and how we should put it together, you know how many people came along and told us we was a cult?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know how many preachers came and said it'll never work?
Yep.
Now look at how many preachers that are in this city trying to do exactly what we do. Because we are apostolic. It's because we are forerunners. That means we'll do something even though it's not traditional. If it's a God thought, can I tell you it'll catch on? If it's a God thought, it will be celebrated. And if it never is, somebody say it's all right with me. And so look at here, that's number two. He says, listen, he says, I don't want you to get an idea of you based upon how somebody treats you. The thought of not being good enough, dumb or stupid are ideas created to suppress one's uniqueness. Are you hearing me? And so we've got to overcome these lies that the enemy puts within our minds so that we can become everything that God wants us to be. Number three, society has a cookie cutter type of system. That if you are not what the majority thinks is acceptable, then you must take the rejection label and try to survive on your own. Society will create this cookie cutter type of reality so that you can try to conform and reform so that you can be sociably acceptable by everybody. Lord have mercy. But if you're sociably accepted by everybody, then you are no use to God.
Say it again.
Say that, sir.
Are you hearing what I'm saying? Listen, you cannot always sit in a position where you are always consistently and persistently trying to be everybody's friend. Do you understand that you are going to make somebody mad at you? How? By just being yourself.
Yes. Being you. Being you.
Now, do we need to grow in grace? Absolutely. Do we need to grow in love? Absolutely. Do we need to grow in social intelligence? Absolutely. I'm not talking about glorifying yourself in a place of error. No, I'm talking about being humble enough to admit where you're wrong. That says, yes, I need to grow in a particular area, but I'm not willing to compromise who I am just so that I can be accepted in your little clique.
I don't want it.
Are Are you hear what I'm saying? God called me for a purpose. So here it is. I want to put this in your ear before I sit down. To be rejected literally means that you will not survive or be accepted. So watch this. Rejection, based upon my own personal definition, is another person's negative idea, thought, or image of you that you have accepted for yourself. Therefore, watch this. Rejection has no power unless it's accepted. Rejection has no power unless you accept somebody else's idea about you that is in a negative light.
My God.
Can I tell you, every time you went to go find out who told a lie about you, you validated that lie?
Come on.
Every time you went and say, oh, who said this, and I'm going to make sure they did it. And when you go do all of that, you actually bring validation
I gave the power.
to a thought
My God.
that is erroneous.
My
If
God.
it's a lie, it can't last.
Come on.
The last time I checked, God is truth. And truth is the one that prevails. Truth is eternal. Truth will outlast a lie any day. So tell your neighbor for the second time, touch your neighbor and say, sit back and just chill. Just chill. Just relax in your truth. One day truth will come back and validate you. This is what we found out. Doing some research, we found out this, that rejection is still painful though.
Yes, sir.
Rejection will have you looking like a dysfunctional individual.
All jacked up.
You'll be sitting in an experience and everybody will be celebratory, everybody will be in a happy state of mind or consciousness. And you'll sit there and you'll be skeptical, looking for the pain.
Oh, God.
Come on.
Oh,
Come on
God.
now. Come on.
Somebody come and shake your hand. When are you shaking my hand?
Come on. That's the truth.
Why are you getting so close to me? Why?
Come on.
Let's go out to dinner. Why you want to go out to dinner with me?
Come on.
And God forbid if you're in a room with somebody that rejected you. All of a sudden your whole experience has changed. Because now you can't sit there, oh, I know it's going to get antsy in here. But now you can't sit there because now your perceived enemy or the person that did not like you is in the room. So now you got to leave when that person sits in your seat.
I ain't going.
Rejection will make you look crazy.
My God.
I hear what I'm talking about. Rejection will make you go off on people for no reason.
No reason.
God.
They'll say something in their vocabulary or in their language that will trigger something on the inside of you. And then all of a sudden you're going to respond from that place of pain
My God.
because you never processed it yet.
My God.
Never processed it.
Who am I talking to in this room?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Listen, I've dealt with it so
Everybody.
much in my own life. I know what I'm preaching about.
Yeah.
Do you know how nerve-wracking it is when you are dealing with a spirit of rejection to come up here and grab a microphone?
Yes.
Sunday after Sunday after Sunday.
Yes.
Wednesday after Wednesday. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And any type of body language, you start picking up on it,
Yeah.
trying to feed the spirit that is in your mind, telling
My
you that
God.
you're rejected. Oh, see that? She crossed her legs. You see that? That means she ain't receiving nothing you say. I told you rejection will make you crazy. You see that? He got up and he's walking in the back of the room. That means that he's about to walk out on your message. See, that means your message ain't no good to him. And if you are subject to that spirit, all of a sudden you're going to start going off and everybody's like,
What's wrong? Come on, expose it. Come on.
Yes, sir.
My God.
somebody can ask you, how you doing today? You mean, like, what you mean, how am I doing today? How you think I'm doing today?
Come on, Apostle. You all in there.
Somebody say rejection. If we don't deal with rejection, we will walk out of relationships that God has ordained for us to be in. We will fall out of love with people that God has ordained for us to be in.
My goodness.
Because it's not the Spirit of the Lord that's controlling us, but it's a spirit of rejection.
My goodness.
You'll start trying to pop pills to try to take care of it.
Absolutely.
This is interesting. Watch
I know
this.
you're right.
Rejection is a painful feeling inflicted upon the individual who has perceived that they are not received. Emotional pain can be felt by those enduring rejection. Watch this. Neuroscience has taught that people who feel emotional pain, the same areas of the brain get activated as when people feel physical pain.
Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
that means you literally can feel
Yes.
somebody else's thought concerning you.
Come on.
Are you hearing me? Thoughts start in the mind, and if they're incubated long enough, they will get into the body. And you will feel the sensation of a thought inside of your body. How do I know this? Because when you get a thought that you're afraid, you literally can feel it within your body.
Yeah.
True that. True
Same thing happens when you begin to receive a rejected thought within your mind. Your body starts to feel it.
Yes.
They actually did some tests, and they said that the two areas of the brain, one is the anterior insula and the other is the anterior cingulate cortex, literally starts to be rearranged because it's the same area that feels pain physically is the same area that can feel pain emotionally.
Yeah.
Come on, sir.
It's in the same area. Somebody say the same area.
Same area.
So in one study, these regions were activated when people experienced an experiential social rejection from peers. And in another more real-life study, the same regions were activated when people who had recently broken up with a romantic partner viewed pictures of the former partner. So they just put the picture in front of them.
See?
And they started to feel the same physical, emotional pain just from a picture.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is so true.
So if physical and emotional pain have similar neural signatures, watch this, you can literally take a Tylenol and feel better.
Wow.
They did the study, and you can believe it or not.
That's the truth.
But for people who are in grief or loss or despair, people who had experiences or experienced a recent social rejection were randomly assigned to take a Tylenol versus a placebo effect. You all know what that is, a fake drug.
Yes, sir.
Daily for 3 weeks. The people in the Tylenol or that was receiving the Tylenol reported fewer hurt feelings during that period.
Wow.
When their brains were scanned at the end of the treatment period, the Tylenol takers had less activation in the anterior insula and the anterior cingulate cortex. So the reaction to the rejection is so tremendous that it literally can have effect on you physically, and you can literally take a Tylenol and feel better.
Wow.
Now, do I recommend that? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because taking a pill to take care of a red light that comes on in your car is like literally going into the car and cutting off the red light instead of taking care of the problem.
Right.
You
Yeah.
don't want to mask
That's
what's
right.
going on.
That's right.
What we need to do is go to the thought that, oh God, that came into your mind and reconstruct it so that you can now live free and not be bound any longer. Somebody say, Lord, help me. So when we're looking into the text, we found out that by the time Jesus says now when he came to the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people confronted him as he was teaching and said, by what authority are you doing these things? This is 23-27. They could not handle that they were being rejected by a greater level of authority.
My Lord.
So people are going to be threatened by you because of the fact that if you come along with greater levels of authority, greater levels of power, they are now starting to feel rejected and feel incomplete within their own mind. Now watch this. If they feel that way about themselves, the only way that they can see a solution is to turn around and impose their thought of themselves onto you. Oh, y'all better catch this. Y'all better catch this. Sometimes people are not treating you, my God, in a bad light. It's the fact that the thoughts that they have within their mind treats them to a bad way. So as a result, they are now projecting a thought of themselves onto you. And when you understand that, you can turn around and love somebody that's treating you crazy because you understand that they're not treating you bad, they're treating themselves that way.
Come on.
It's a miserable person that injects or projects misery into somebody else's life on purpose.
On
Are
purpose.
you hear what I'm saying?
My Lord.
And so that needs to help us. That needs to get us into an environment where we say, listen, I'm not going to keep responding to you based upon how you treat me. I'm not going to react to how you treat me because I'm not responding, or neither am I thinking of myself in the same light. If you are threatened by me, you're threatened by my authority, you're threatened by my power, I am not going to get into a match with you to try to show you who's got greater power. Can I tell you, any person that tries to get into a match with an individual to try to show them how powerful they are really shows them how weak they are. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Oh, can I help somebody in this room? I said stand still.
Stand still.
Don't get into busy business and trying to find out who's doing this and who's doing that. Stand still in the security of who you are and keep rehearsing in your thoughts that I'm loved by God, that I am beautifully and wonderfully made, that God did not deject me, but God accepted me. God accepted me so much so that even when I was in a state of rejection, He died on the cross just so that I could be His.
Come on. Yes,
Are you hear
sir.
what I'm saying?
Yes.
So this is what we've got to do. Look at here. As I'm going here, it says, now in the text of 42 through 46, Jesus said to them, have you never read in the scriptures, the stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone? This was the Lord's doing.
Yes.
And it's marvelous in our eyes.
Yes, God.
Notice here that he says, he's quoting Psalms 118. And in that original scripture, that scripture is actually David said, oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for He is good.
Yes.
Because His mercy endureth forever. Let Israel now say, the mercy endureth forever. Let the house of Aaron now say that His mercy endureth forever. Let them now that fear the Lord say, His mercy endureth forever. I called upon the Lord in distress. The Lord answered me and set me in a large place. The Lord is on my side. I will not fear that what man can do unto me. The Lord taketh my part with them that help me. Therefore shall I see my desire upon them that hate me. Look here. He says, let me rehearse a song that you know.
Yes.
Oh God, ain't nobody talking.
Yes.
He said, since you don't like the thought that I am, he says, let me tell you where I come from. I come from the lineage of people who are kingly.
Yes.
And I'm not here to try to get any acceptance from you. He says, as a matter of fact, your rejection is doing nothing but promoting me.
Yeah. Yes.
I hear what I'm saying. And look at what happens. He starts quoting this text so that he can tell them, listen, the religious leaders are not what's controlling my altitude of my spiritual experience.
Come on, sir.
Are you hearing me? He says, in essence, I'm already secure because I know what I've been sent here to do.
That's right.
I already know that you were going to talk about me. I already know.
Yeah.
You was going to make fun. I already knew. It was in the plan.
Come on.
Are you hearing
My
me?
God.
And so he says, look here. He says, the stone that the builders rejected. After all of this rejection, after all of this people that you have beat up, all of the prophets, all of the messengers that God has sent to you to try to get you to turn around, I know you won't turn around, and I know you're going to try to reject and deject. He says, as a matter of fact, I'm the son, and I know what you're going to do. I know you're going to try to kill me. Right? He's talking to them. He's prophesying to them their role. It seems as if that in that experience that they will say, okay, you know what? Since he's quoting a scripture from the text of David, the psalmist, we probably should make a turn. But no, they were so
my God,
dead center
my God.
on making sure that they kill something that is rejecting them,
My God.
that is causing them to feel insignificant or inferior. So now they says, let me kill that so that we can feel superior. And watch this. The question that I have was, why did Jesus even validate them and call them the builders?
Come on.
He said the stone that the builders rejected. Notice here that he is saying now, I'm not going to be derogatory and I'm not going to be negative.
Come on.
He said, you're still a builder.
Come on.
Wow, wow, wow.
Even though you're throwing stones at me,
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm still not going to call you out of your name.
My God.
I'm still going to honor and respect you. Look at this. Can y'all see the position of somebody that is really secure in God?
Yes.
Is the fact that now the voice of negativity never became his voice.
Yes.
And because now he keep hearing in his head, this is my beloved son. This is my beloved son. In whom I'm well pleased. He's able to stand in front of people that are about to kill him
My God.
and say, yeah, you're still a builder.
My God.
Jesus.
Wow.
Are you
Wow.
hearing me?
My God.
And it's the religious leaders. Who are the builders? It's the religious leaders are the ones that are building an idea of what's acceptable and what wasn't.
Come on.
That means that the majority was governed by a minority of people who get to be called the developers of thought. These are builders. Who are the builders in our community? Who thought of this system? Come on, you got to be able to ask yourself, that even the life that you're currently living in right now, who thought of this?
Who did it?
Who came up with this? Because I would have never designed this for myself.
Right, right.
So what is it that I'm walking past? What is it that I'm giving up so that I can exist in an idea that did not come from me? I did not construct this.
Come on.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
So Jesus did not come against them, and he did not say that you're not builders. He says, I'll give you your props. He says, because you got the whole community in your hand. But can I tell you, there's about to be a shift. Why is there about to be a shift? Is because, notice this, that what has been created in the finite cannot contain the thought that was created in the infinite.
Come on. Wow.
Deep, deep.
Wow. That's right.
The thought that God created is an infinite thought. Watch this. And it has an ability now to separate just based upon who agrees or believes in that thought and who doesn't. So Jesus has a way of now coming into the scene and said, this is what the scriptures really mean. This is the idea of God's mind. These are the people that sit around and they try to talk about it. They go through all of these schools and exegete and eisegete, and they do all of these other things trying to say that this is the system of order to get away with revelation. He says, no, the thing that you're trying to get, I am. I am the revelation. I am. He says, so I'm not trying to learn or hear what everybody else says, but he says, but let me bring you back into a place so that you can understand where I'm coming from. He says, this scripture is about to be fulfilled in your ear.
Yes.
The stone that the builders rejected.
Come on.
Those that have now been inflicting pain upon other people to try to make themselves feel superior. He says there's about to be a shift coming. Because this is, watch this, that I'm now going to cause now what you meant for bad to actually work for my good. How does he do that? Because he decides what he's going to experience. Y'all better hear that. Regardless of how somebody built an idea around you to try to case you into a place called limitation, you still determine the outcome based upon what you're going to experience.
Yes, God. Yes, yes,
Somebody
yes.
say, I have the power.
I have the power.
I don't care what you say. I don't care how you say it. I don't care how you politic. I don't care how you dance and shout. I don't care how you try to get home with this person and connect with this person to try to make somebody look isolated and make somebody look insignificant. Ain't none of it gonna work because I decide. Somebody say, I decide. I decide. I decide how significant I'm going to be. I decide how powerful I'm going to be. I'm going to decide how strong I am in the Lord. How do you do that? Through my submission.
Just let him make the kill.
It's not through pride. It's through submission. It's through humbling yourself before the mighty hand of God and saying, listen, I'm going to do his will even if it costs me my own life. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And so how do we know this? Listen, we know that the builders always create an area that is too small for us to live in. How do you know a person came up with an experience or came up with an idea? How do you know it? You'll know it if it's not big enough for all of us. When somebody creates something, it is always for their benefit. Oh, y'all better hear me. You know it's God when it's not just for your benefit. If this idea benefits everybody else, oh God, then you already know that it did not come from the finite. It had to come from the infinite. So what has been created in the mind of the finite is too small for the infinite to exist in. Therefore, the infinite, God, cannot be contained in a man-made idea. It's too small for God and man to live there. Because the finite has to create an idea where he is God. But the infinite is so secure within himself, he says, listen, I'm going to create a thought and an idea that I'm going to be God, but I don't have to sit on the pedestal.
My God.
It's just going to automatically happen because of the fact that everybody else will become glorified and everybody else will become elevated. Are you hearing me? Can I tell you this as we're going? He says, watch this. This word now, rejection now says, I'm not going to be here forever. Because now, as I'm making a decision on what's going to take place in my experience, what you tried to put down, I'm going to use it to elevate me. But how are you going to do that? This word to reject in the text means, watch this, apanakimazo. It means to reject after testing.
Wow.
And after they test it, they will disqualify it. So when you look at the text, watch this, they are literally building something. He says the stone that the builders rejected. You got to go to Psalms 118 and follow this. He says the stone that the builders rejected has now become the capstone. Watch this. What he's talking about is literally a pyramid. The cornerstones, because over there in that area, they did not dig into the ground. They did not create foundation like we do here. What they did was they would create cornerstones. And when they created the cornerstone, they would take rocks now and build up and put all the pressure on the cornerstone. As they were looking at the rocks, they would test the rock to see if it would fit in the existing wall. And if they looked at the wall and said, this stone does not fit, they would reject it. And so they would go find another stone and put it within the building structure.
Come on, sir.
He says, I found out after doing some research that when he got done being rejected, he told them, listen, the stone that you looked at and said would not qualify to go into the system of the wall. He says, I am not going to be in the foundation where you wanted me to be. Because I was never designed to be that low. He said the stone now that the builders rejected is going to become the capstone. Which means I was never supposed to be in the foundation. He said it was all going to focus to come back to me. Oh, y'all better hear me. The reason why you don't fit where you are is because God is trying to make you the head and not the tail. He's trying to make you above and not beneath. Quit getting mad because somebody rejected you at the base. It's because God said, I designed for you to be at the top. We told them, touch your neighbor and say, I'm going to the top. I'm going to the top. I understand. God didn't put me in the system, my God, for me to people, no. God said all of these experiences
Every
are
single
pushing you to be at the head.
Hey,
Somebody say, I'm going to the head.
I'm going to the head.
I'm going to leadership. How many of you understand that sometimes rejection is direction? And God said you got to go up from here. And so don't ever sit around amongst low-level thinking, low-level thoughts, and try to get along with low-level thinking. Get off Facebook trying to get everybody to approve of your picture. Oh, ain't nobody talking in here. Y'all's going to be quiet now. Quit trying to post something every single day and that somebody can try to feed you in your insecurity. We know what's really going on. You standing in the bathroom. What you doing all that for? You must not feel accepted within your own self. Because you are consistently being bombarded with low-level thinking. And so God says, listen, I want you to appreciate what I created. Oh God. I want you to appreciate what I put in you so that you don't ever have to get on Facebook to look for somebody to like your picture. If you don't ever get on Facebook Live with me, I'm fine with it. If you don't ever click the love button, I'm fine with it. Ain't nobody talking. Because I already know I was not designed to be at the base. I'm designed to be the head corner. Somebody say, I'm designed that way. I'm not being bougie. I'm just designed for excellent things. Who am I talking to in this room? Can't put up with that or dabba, do you? Can't put up with a nasty house. Ain't nobody gonna talk to you. Can't put up with a dirty car. I'm designed for something greater. I'm supposed to be the chief cornerstone.
I'm supposed to be.
You preaching.
I'm supposed to be.
You know what I'm saying? Is that too practical for you? Somebody say, I'm designed for greater. After the testing.
Gotta go through testing.
After the testing. Some folks may throw you down, but after the testing. You might see somebody this week that you know dogged you. After the testing. Nobody talking to me. I never understood why God. There's a particular church that I used to go frequent. And every time I came into the church, I was a Baptist boy, and they knew they were Pentecostal. So every time I'd come in, the leadership would change their whole meeting to try to antagonize and dog me. I said, God, I ain't coming back. He says, oh, yes, you are. And as a matter of fact, you're going to the front row. I said, what? He said, go back and sit on the front row. Why? Because God was designing my mind to be secure in what he called me to be. Listen, people may never get you. They may never understand you. They may never applaud you. But I don't ever want your unapplause and their rejection and their disqualification to become your reality. Are you hear what I'm saying?
Ooh, that's so good.
I don't understand why. You know, I'm getting these experiences where they're calling me to be on this and be on that. I say, oh God, you know how I am. Word Network called me a few weeks ago. Said, we want you to come on Word Network. Yes, sir. We want you to be our premier preacher. Come on. I want you to preach for the next 20 minutes. I said up there, oh God, you know who I am. Come on. Why are you trying to give me this opportunity? I go to Africa and I'm thinking I'm just going to enjoy all the rest of the preachers. I see that they put my face on the fly. I say, oh God.
My God, everybody got to get up.
You know I'm going to say whatever you put in my heart to say.
Everybody got to get up.
Are you hearing what I'm saying?
My God.
I go down to another area, the College of the Prophets. You know, they got all these Brian Carn, they got all these big names, synagogue, all these prophets that have been in the area, big names, big ministries. And then they got me up there. I'm like, Lord, you know how I am. Why you got me here? You know I'm going to say whatever comes to mind. You know I'm going to say it. So God said that's the reason why I put you in those positions. Because the stone, you might get rejected here. You may get tossed aside here. It's only because they're calling you on a whole other level. How many understand that most of the people that are sitting at the head never asked to be there?
Never. My God.
That's right.
Never wanted that position.
Come on now.
Never wanted to be sought out, to be picked on.
My God.
Because can I tell you, the minute that you get up at the top, you're going to be criticized by everybody.
Come on, come on.
And if you can't handle bad press, you can't handle folks lying on you. Dog, now I'm talking about a little sister down here said a little something about you, and all of a sudden you want to try to kill him in the parking lot. Somebody say after testing. God said, I got to get you meek and humble.
You shot
Man, you got the power to kill, steal, and destroy. Come on here. One pen can destroy somebody's reputation. One text post can destroy somebody's reputation. But you can sit back and say, I'm not going to be like that.
Right.
I'm called to be the head. Everybody stand here. Somebody say, I'm called to be the head. So what is God saying? He says, listen, for some of you,
Yes, Lord.
you've endured hardness as a good soldier.
Come on. Thank you, Jesus.
And now God is bringing you into a place
Yes.
where He's going to elevate you.
Yes,
Lord.
But He says, I got to heal you first.
Yes, sir. Come
I'm going
on.
to give an altar call, and I'm going to dismiss all of you that feel like you have something else to go to that's better than this.
Come on, Apostle. My God.
So we release you.
Come on.
But I want to let you know there's some people in this room that's hurting.
Come on, Apostle.
Maybe like me. I still battle it.
Yeah.
Because a thought will come into my mind.
Yeah.
Before you know it, I'm supposed to be having a good time. And I want to bite folks.
Devour.
You
My
ain't the
Lord.
only one.
I was over in Africa. I said, the Lord said, your spirit is wrestling with the spirit that's in the atmosphere. I said, oh, okay, because I could not understand what was happening to me. I said, what's going on? And I don't understand. I said, I'm normally cordial amongst people that I don't even know. But I had a spirit of warlike. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And it was the fact that God was doing something in that area. While we were there, 13 people died in the church. It's a storm and the whole building collapsed. And 13 people were right there in the same church because of the Passover weekend, and they died. As we were in the airplane, riding back here, as we were coming back, the whole Durban city started getting flooded. Walls started caving. The church that we were at is on the side of a hill, and so that wall started to cave in. You don't know why God puts you in a certain area with a certain attitude. Sometimes your attitude is prophetic because of something that's coming. And you're trying to warn the people, listen. Listen.
Jesus.
So don't ever get so caught up on what social people do, what people want to say or do, so that it controls the will of God concerning you. Be strong in the Lord. There are some people in this room, I need you to come up here. You're wrestling with a spirit of rejection. Crying, nervous, anxious in the middle of the night, because there is a spirit that is overtaking your consciousness, overtaking your mind, and making you feel as if you're not worthy. The enemy is using it as a shame tactic to make sure that you don't ever do anything. But I'm here to let you know, this is a moment now. This is a moment. This is a moment that God has created for you to get breakthrough. Not only that, but there are some of you here that need to be saved. You're not rejected by God. You have rejected yourself based upon an idea that you think of God. God is standing right here saying, listen, I'm going to cover all of your emotional traumas. How's he going to do that? He's going to love you unconditionally. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
So I need you to come to this altar now. You want to be saved. Say, I want to give my life to the Lord. I know he will not deny me. In Jesus' name. Thank God. Thank God. I got 5 seconds. Somebody close down this altar call. 4, 3, 2, 1. As we're lifting our hands, everybody in the sanctuary, everybody to stay at this altar, everybody that is at this sanctuary, I want you to repeat after me. Say, Heavenly Father, I know I've been rejected. I know I've been hurt. But I thank you for healing me, loving me, bringing me back to a place that I matter. I am significant. this place. I'm not looking for acceptance. I'm leaving here. Knowing I've been accepted. I thank you for this. I am your child. I belong to you. Forever. In Jesus' name. If you leave it, now do me a favor. Some people have never really felt a real touch, a real hug, a hug of acceptance. If you can do that, go beyond your normal and just hug somebody. All of you that are leaving, hug somebody and say, I love you. Ain't a thing you can do about it. Y'all at the altar, y'all stay up here. For those of you that have to leave, just hug somebody and say, I love you. And ain't a thing you can do about it. In Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. All right, everybody that is at this altar, I'm going to pray for you now. I want all of the ministers to come up in front, please. Amen. Glory to God. Come stand together. Right now, there's a cool spring of refreshing that's coming over you. Lift your hands. The Spirit of the Lord now is covering you with supernatural forgiveness. I can see the Lord saying forgiveness. 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 You have run yourself ragged trying to get acceptance, trying to get value, trying to get approval. Because there is a voice inside you consistently and persistently telling you you're not good enough. But today, I say today, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. God says, I'm elevating you out of this place of scornfulness and hurt and rejection. In Jesus' name. And I hear you saying within your mind, it's my fault. It's my fault that this didn't work. It's my fault that that relationship didn't work. The Lord says it's a lie. I loved you too much to leave you there. I loved you too much to be allowing you to be subject to those levels of abuse. Emotionally, psychologically. Today, the Lord says, I free you. And now I give you a free spirit. A spirit of forgiveness and healing and breakthrough in Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. Hallelujah. Today your freedom starts. Today your freedom starts. The Lord says it's already been in the process. The Lord says you've been on the last 6 months of a refreshing, restoring of your spirit. You've been in a dead place, an isolated place, but the Lord says, I'm bringing life to you. And it's like, I see you sitting in your house where the curtains used to be drawn, but now the light is coming in. And it's not just literal, but that's figurative. That the Spirit of the Lord says, now there's revelation, and there's a new day that is dawning within your life. So the Lord says, do not look for the pain. Do not look for the areas in your life that caused you so much pain. But now look for your healing. Look for the love that is now being restored unto you. In Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. There's some of you right now, you've been visiting some physical pains. You've been feeling physical pains, physical hurts. And that you just wave your hand at me. Glory to God. It's because of the Spirit. I just want to touch you. Father, in the name of Jesus, I thank you. The Lord says to tell you, He says, I'm restoring you, but there's something concerning a love between you and a father. It's almost as if you meant to be spoiled, and it's like something is missing within your heart because now, for some reason, that love is not there anymore. And so the Spirit of the Lord said, I'm going to restore you. And the Lord said, I'm taking you back 21 years. Wow. And He says, I'm going to heal you. I'm going to heal you in your heart from this day forward. And it's not the fact that the Lord wants to bring up old things, but He says, listen, these areas of your life is trying to create an area of rejection within you, but not any longer. I, the Spirit of the Lord, heal you from the crown of your head to the soles of your feet. So you no longer hold the memory of hurt within your body. We release it right now in Jesus' name. I thank you, Father. Restoration comes to her. Healing comes to her now. In Jesus' name. Come on, just receive the healing love of God. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I can't pray for everybody. But this is a place of restoration. Come on, this is a place of healing for you. I'm just going to touch you. I just touch you. No more. Come on, the voices of protection. I will find you. Oh God, you're going to do some things without fear. Fear protection. Come on, in Jesus' name. Jesus' name. Jesus' name. Jesus' name. The Lord said, tell her I'm holy, right? Tell her that I'm holy. And the Lord says, I'm completing my love. You're not missing anything. The Lord says, you're not missing anything. Quit looking like you're missing opportunities and missing this and missing that. The Lord says, you're right on target. I brought you all the way back around to bring you to a moment right now. And God said, you're not going to miss this. Not this year, not this moment. In Jesus' name. Hallelujah. In Jesus' name. Father, I thank you. Whatever went on in your family, the Lord says, I'm erasing that identity from your life. I'm releasing you from it right now in Jesus' name. Some people did some things to you that had family members' names tied to it. And the Lord says, I'm releasing you from the abuse and disdain. Some stuff they call love, it was not love. It was not love. The Lord said, I'm taking that from you. And today and forever, you're going to know what real love is. In Jesus' name. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Glory to God. Be restored. Be restored. Lay your hand on the Lord's feet. You don't have to fight anymore. Lift your hand. Hallelujah. That's it. You just want to surrender. You have a reaction in you. You just want to go into defense. But the Lord says, I'm afraid of you from it. You won't even have to talk so much. You will keep your peace. Glory to God. Arguments, you will find out they will kind of dissipate. Tension, the enemy tries to create around you. It's going to start to dissipate. It's not going to free your heart from the land. Jesus. Hallelujah. Your family and your son is never going to come from what you do. It's come from who you are. From this day forward, we pray that the Spirit of the Lord will rekindle and bring out a level of identity within you that you didn't even know that was there. You never seen yourself somehow. So the Lord is going to elevate you so that you can see the truth of who you really are. In Jesus' name. And every negative experience from you. And I pray now that every experience that you had in the past, that you can feel like a negative sense and be turned around supernaturally as a positive. In Jesus' name. And I hear the Lord saying in scripture, and today is marvelous today in my eyes. The thing that the enemy meant for bad. Thank you, Jesus. In Jesus' name. Thank you, Jesus. In Jesus' name. Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah. 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 Come on, some people are being healed, being delivered from emotional pain. Traumas that have occurred over the years. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for freedom. Thank you for freedom. Thank you for freedom. Jesus' name. Go see right tonight. 6 p.m. God bless you.